Hi everyone, welcome back. And this is sort of going to be a one-off video, assuming it doesn't really go anywhere. But this is sort of me just wanting to document my latest sort of hobby that I sort of picked up over the past year. Because albeit I have a lot of ideas for keyboard videos that are still on the back burner, mind you, such as building my professor, or rather a friend's professor, a keyboard. And of course wanting to tackle a certain question as to what makes a Switch a gaming Switch. Spoilers, the question is just dumb. I also wanted to just sort of showcase something I've done for the last 2 months, which is gradually but slowly gather stuff off of the local secondhand market and build something other than a keyboard. Or post random Genshin content, of course. And to be quite honest, this literally is just as bad as keyboard spending, if not worse, since the used market has you hounding deals like a day trader and spending a lot of money. So I limited myself to just $500 for a build and put the kibosh on just hoarding parts and wasting all my time flipping things for some measly sum, even though it doesn't really sound like a bad idea considering I'm a broke college student with double-digit checking accounts. So today, before you stands all the parts, well, most of them at least, for my first ever ITX build that I've always wanted to do since I have a strange fascination with small stuff and trinkets. So before you stands quite a lot of parts I've been gathering over the last month or so, and this is my most recent project. And of course, like I said before, this is an ITX build that with all the parts combined, off the used market at least, it's under half a grand. And I think I scored big time for a lot of stuff. Now to make things clear, this is not a build guide for parts you can find in stock. However, I will put prices on the screen, one in which is the price I got it at, and the other price is probably the price that you should not be exceeding when trying to aim for stuff on the used market, whether it be on OfferUp, Hardware Swap on Reddit, Facebook Marketplace, or whatever domain you decide to peruse. Because this isn't supposed to be me flexing or anything, it's just to showcase my new little obsession in a coherent video that was a project in the making. Just like keyboard builds and such, it's just another part of the computer. So with every build comes a computer case, of course, and the case that I chose is the Fractal Define Nano S, and this is a tried and true ITX case that allows you to fit ATX components, mostly anyway, and it has a lot of customizability with, of course, the standard Fractal things, such as good fan mounting, cable routing, and spots to put your SSD. And you can see here that the actual thing has silencing padding. And I am somewhat of a quiet freak, considering that I allow my temperatures to run somewhat toasty on my main system, which draws a lot more power, by the way. I didn't mind putting this one to the test and giving it a little bit of extra quietness, I suppose. So the Fractal Define Nano S was perfect for me. And everything within this case is just what I want. So yet again, I can put two 140mm in the front, one 120mm in the back, and everything in this case is pretty much just standard Fractal. You can see that I just pointed at the Fractal sort of SSD bay, and pretty much everything within here is just fine. I just made sure that I decided to get this thing at a discount, and sure I did. I managed to get this at a measly $30. Now I don't know how much the actual retail is supposed to be for this thing, so I'm just going to assume it's about $70 or $80, but regardless, for a little bit of a cleanup, and having everything within the actual case, such as the power supply screws, the standoffs, and everything else in between, I think I found a pretty good deal. You can see in the back here, it's just more standard Fractal things, such as the inbuilt sort of cable management Velcro, and the really well thought out things, at least for the time I suppose, with storage compartments. So you can see on the left is actually an HDD bay, and the thing I just pointed at was yet again the SSD bay when I had the case in the other direction. And there's actually a decent amount of gaps here, in which my finger was just that, so you can shove your cables in there and forget about them. In order to access the mesh and of course the fans, you can just tear off the front panel like it's nothing. All you gotta do is just shimmy it a little bit and it comes straight off. I do shimmy it around a little bit here because the bottom tray is actually sort of catching the front panel, but otherwise everything in here is everything as I wanted. And the front also has silencing pads as well, which is kind of cool. And everything else here is just standard, whatever you call it. Bog standard, I would say, but it's not a bad thing. I'll be changing out the fan soon, and you'll see that later in the build. So for the motherboard, I decided to go with the AB350 Gaming-ITX/AC, and it's not out of my own fruition. Rather, I found this insane deal on OfferUp. I got it for only $80, and the twist is that not only did it come with every single accessory, but it also came with a Ryzen 5 2600, in which that I actually have taken out of the motherboard before unboxing this thing and sold it off for some extra pocket change. For the RAM, I went with Corsair Vengeance LPX. You've seen these RAM sticks pretty much everywhere. I got 2 sticks of 16 gigs, so a total of 32 gigabytes of 3200 megahertz. And the reason why I decided to go with these is because, well, first, I'm a very tab-hungry person, and also because, for some reason, when I use the Quest Link and play VR, the RAM really goes up to like 14 or 15 gigabytes out of 16 gigabytes of usage. So I decided to play it safe and just give myself the extra 16 gigs. This is not only going to be a VR/backup gaming PC, but also just a backup system in general, so might as well take it and make it work. And I paid $50, but it actually went up to $60, but only because of convenience sake. I found this RAM listed right when I was at work, and I had someone drive over 40 minutes to come to me, and they only wanted $10 for compensation. And all you had to do was just be nice and ask nicely, I suppose. And they said that it was their one day off, and I just popped out during lunchtime, so I didn't mind them coming over at a moment's notice for $10 more. I did manage to find 32 gigabytes of the same rated speed, although 4 sticks of RAM for $40, but that was actually just sort of a unicorn find. I managed to pair it with a Corsair H60 that they were also selling off for really cheap, so I got these sticks plus another Corsair H60 for $50. So I would say that the RAM was actually $40. But yeah, good RAM. For the CPU, I decided to go with the Ryzen 5 3600X. And to be quite honest, I didn't expect to find it at this price. I found it for $60 local. I drove about 20 minutes from my school to meet up with a nice middle-aged lady that was unable to speak English, but willing to, use Google Translate and help a brother out. So I got it off for $60 Zelle, because sometimes OfferUp people will allow other forms of payment, such as Zelle, Venmo, Cash App, yada yada yada. And 3600s usually go for between 60, maybe even 50 if you're lucky enough, to up maybe $75 to $80. Don't pay over $100 for it, so wait for a good deal if you can. But I found a Ryzen 5 3600 the other day for only $50, and I don't think anyone has taken it yet, although I'm not sure why. But regardless, I hope someone finds that good deal. Of course, graphics cards are all the rage these days, so I actually picked up a GeForce GTX 1070 Ti MSI Armor Edition for $85. And of course, MSI Armor cards are notorious for running a little bit more toasty, but to be quite honest, I don't think it's a problem. And considering that most graphics cards run to about 60 or 70 degrees anyway, I think you should be worrying if it reaches 80 or 90, but I could be wrong, who knows. But if things actually do go wrong and I feel like I don't want to put this thing into this case anymore, I have a standard 1070 8GB Asus Dual OC edition that I picked up for the same price of $85 anyway. For storage, I picked up the Crucial MX500 M.2, and I believe this is supposed to be made for PCIe Gen 3, so it actually works because it won't be any wasted potential, because I did pick up a SN850 from Western Digital for only $35 the other day as well, but I believe that goes up to PCIe Gen 4, and I don't want it to just be wasted on a PCIe Gen 3 slot on this motherboard. So I'm going to pick the Crucial instead. That was only a $25 find, although with shipping and handling, of course. But still, for M.2, I don't think that's bad at all. I found it on eBay, and unfortunately it's sold out now, but I mean, this is probably a unicorn find. You'd probably find these for about $30 to $40 instead. Now you might be thinking, where is the cooler in your build? And this is where I decided to just sort of try my luck. And I sort of dug out a Hyper 212, and this is one of the older versions, as you can see here. This cooler has the, I think it's called the Red Edition, and it has 2 fans on either side, and even comes with a fan joiner in the case of you trying to put this thing on an ITX or MATX build. And this was an absolute chore to put on because I'm afraid of taking this shit off. But at the end of the day, it actually worked out quite well. And I still had clearance for the CPU cable, so I think everything worked out in the end. It just looks so ridiculous on this on the motherboard because it just looks like a gigantic tumor coming out of it. But alas, I don't think this is the craziest thing any PC builder has seen, to be honest with you. For the power supply, I actually struck gold, literally. I found an EVGA Supernova 650 GS, 80 plus gold, of course, for $20 on good old Facebook Marketplace, with all the cables too, minus the PCIe one. For some reason, they didn't include the standard VGA one, but luckily a local seller was selling them by the cable for $5. And I did make sure to verify that the cables were, of course, compatible, because if you were to swap around modular power supply cables, that's a big risk. The original plan was to shove this 750 G2 in there, but as you can see, I don't think it's actually supposed to fit in this thing, and it definitely would not have survived any of the cable bending, so I decided to go with something else. For the fans you can see in the front, I decided to go with two 140mm Pure Wings 2 Be Quiet fans, and not pictured here is going to be a 120mm Pure Wings 2 as well. Alright, so before I go back to the condenser mic, when I go edit this video, the preset settings here is hard stuck at 72Hz, the render resolution is a little bit above 100%, and, well, you can tell that my graphics card is having a fantastic time doing this. But yeah, back to the video. Alright, first off, VR, and specifically VRChat. Now, to put extra strain on everything, I'm just going to load up an insanely detailed avatar that has way too many bones and polygons, but we're going to work with it. And overall, I'm pretty sure that the testing is pretty non-scientific considering it varies from place to place, but I'm going to load up an insanely detailed world, and it's almost kind of photorealistic in a way, if not just something that you see out of a high-end Unreal Engine game. So I'm going to be loading into this world, and you can see that peek around. It's absolutely gorgeous. But the combination of my avatar being very detailed, and you can just see the absolute scenery before you, it's handling it quite well, staying over, if not a little bit under 60 FPS, but sometimes it dips down to 36 and then jumps straight back up to 72. And keep in mind, 72 is the hertz, or the FPS, I suppose, so I guess they're just kind of interchangeable in that way. But I'm going to make my way down to the waterfall here, and I'm just going to see how badly the performance tanks. So I'm looking for beneath 36 FPS and around 72 FPS, considering that is the cap, and it seems to be handling it quite well. I'm hitting 72 pretty much like 60 to 70% of the time, And it's like when I look in one particular direction, it sinks back down to 36, but it doesn't go any lower. So I don't know what's up with that, to be honest. Maybe it's some sort of thing in the game, but it's more than serviceable when it comes to playing VR. It looks a lot better in the headset than it does in the video too, by the way. But for now, I think that's a thumbs up for me, because, oh my goodness, the Black Void's coming to eat me. Pretty much, I think, in terms of putting out hard worlds and hard avatars, I'd say this 1070 Ti handles it quite well, and nothing's really maxed out, as you can see. I'm going to put a little bit of a lower load on the VR system now. I'm just going to see if like spawning in enemies or bots or anything actually puts any stress on it, and it seems to be performing insanely well. It doesn't even dip 1 frame below 72 FPS. Goodness. And yeah, pretty much it always stays above 70 FPS, which is basically capping out the FPS. Double points. I'm having way too much fun with this. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's move on to another game. Alright, so moving on to Genshin Impact, and I cranked every setting here. This is a game that is near and dear to this channel, and before going into this, I didn't expect the game to chug or anything, considering that I ran this game on a 1660 Ti XC from EVGA 2 years prior. And looking at the graph, even though this is a objectively better graphics card, 1070 Ti, I'm surprised to see it maxed out near like a little bit under 80 to almost 100%, although usually stopping at 98%. But to the game's credit, you don't really feel it, because I'm pretty sure that's because of the 60 FPS cap. But if you're actually worried about it, just turn down the render resolution from 1.5 to like 1.3 or something. So I don't think it's much of an issue. If you actually are wondering what I'm doing here, I'm just going into the more graphical areas such as Sumeru's New Desert area and trying to fight a boss that spawns a ton of animations and particles while also using characters that spawn a ton of animations and particles themselves. So Nahida and her cursor animations, Kuki's constant lightning, Toma's flames, and of course the Raiden Shogun's burst animation. So overall, I didn't have an issue. I played about maybe 15 to 20 minutes more after this, and keep in mind that the computer was left on for like 4 hours before this, so if it had any time to struggle, it was now, and it didn't disappoint. Now, I tried to get Modern Warfare 2022 to actually run, but this is like the 5th time this has happened where I press play and literally nothing happens. I just kind of sit there with my thumb up my ass, and then boom, it suddenly just puts me on the green play button again, and it just repeats itself. Alright, so moving on to Apex Legends now, and honestly, I don't think I was very graphically fair to this game, but all things considered, it handled it very well. If you see all the settings here, I basically just threw it to the wolves with everything cranked to high, and I didn't really see anything dip under 60 FPS, and considering that I never really struggled by fighting, and the entire arena was just people blowing each other up for 10 minutes straight because it is deathmatch mode, I think it was fine. Considering I'm also a very washed up Apex Legends player as well who can barely get any kills nowadays, I'm actually kind of proud of the fact that I actually managed to get things done while also enjoying myself with a good performing PC. And keep in mind, this is how I've been playing the game. The monitor is literally 3,000 miles away from my head, so all things considered, I think I did a pretty good job. I also believe that the standard Apex player probably doesn't have everything cranked to high anyway, so if you really think about it, this is a somewhat unrealistic test, all things considered. So if anyone wants to replicate this build and or does something for more expensive and or cheaper, I believe that it'll be fine, whatever purpose it tries to serve. Alright, so last but not least, we've got Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and I don't think there's really much to be said about this game. It runs really well, considering that the game came out over a decade ago. A little too well, in fact. You might have noticed a little micro stutter there. I'm assuming the reason why is because it's running a little too well. It's going above the monitor refresh rate. You can see on the top left it reaches over 150, even though that it's supposed to be limited to like 144 or something like that. I don't know, I could be talking out of my ass, but if anyone knows what the particular problem is, let me know. But yeah, pretty much that's all. CSGO is kind of CPU intensive anyway, so anyone that has a good CPU and a decent GPU pairing shouldn't have any issues running this game. Alright, to sum everything up real quick, this is pretty much how much it cost me to build this PC, $425. I would still say add around $60 to $70 of gas, because I did personally have to fill up gas to drive out and stuff like that. Although half of that was driving to school, really. But still, I think it's a fair thing to add on to the price, which still puts it under $500, which makes this video not clickbait. But yeah, I personally think that anyone that also has maybe about $100 of leeway, maybe adding to $500, $600, maybe $700 could replicate this build, if not build something better. All you gotta do is be patient, or maybe even just go out of your way and hound the secondhand market anyway. And just only rule of thumb is that you should probably buy a new power supply, unless if you're willing to trust the sellers and the descriptions of it. However, there is a second system that I haven't showcased yet, and it may potentially be for a friend, and it's this PC. And this PC, honestly, I'm also, I kind of want to use it, because it has a Ryzen 5 5600G in it, and it also has a prime B550M motherboard, decent amount of RAM, decent storage, and the SN850 that I wasn't able to utilize in the AB350 because of PCIe Gen 3. And it also has a 1070 dual OC, which puts up a fair fight. A 1070 is no slouch. But alas, I'm just going to be sticking with the ITX build. It's pretty portable, it's my main backup system, and to be fair, it is very cute. I'm just happy that I can put the kibosh on this real quick and put the hobby on hiatus, because my bank account is bleeding. And to be fair, I guess it's kind of like keyboards, I guess. But anyway, that will conclude the video. I probably will be using this PC only to play VR games and or use as backup storage if I ever need to clear up some hard drive space on my main computer. But until the day comes when I actually need to get rid of the PC, this will pretty much be my one and only backup PC that I'll just have on tap, considering I can also carry it around, so in case if there's ever a need for like LAN parties or whatnot, I can just bring this thing and get things installed. But yeah, if you like this video, I don't usually say this, but I would appreciate it if you were to leave some feedback and or give it a like if you happen to enjoy this thing. If this video gets enough attention, maybe I can whip up the Macro ATX build that I got for $400 and put it up on the channel as well to show off the components and such, because honestly, messing around with keyboards for over half a decade, it's nice to step away from it for a little bit and mess with another piece of tech, and this time it seems to be going up in form factor. Instead of a 100% keyboard, I have a 100% computer. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next video release.